This morning we look at Daniel chapter 3, which is one of my favorite stories in the entire Bible, because it has humor, it has action. I think it's a well-written story, and it's a powerful story of faith. And so it is one of my favorite. My kids have probably heard me preach this one before. It's such a popular Bible story that the VeggieTales turned it into one of their cartoons with Shack-Rack and Benny, if you know the VeggieTales. It's worth a watch. It's a fun one. But we're going to be looking at these three guys in a hot mess, a hot situation. But let me ask you, have you ever felt like you're in a situation so hot and so intense, it felt like there was nowhere to go and you didn't know what to do? And sometimes when we're in those places, we ask God, where are you? Have you abandoned me? I can't feel you. I can't see you. What's going on? And the thing I love about Scripture is that it's never afraid to ask God the tough questions. And I absolutely love that about the God of the Bible, because people have hard questions in life. So sometimes life sucks. It's not easy. And we go through ups and downs. And God isn't afraid of hearing us ask, why? What's going on? I don't understand. I can't see what's happening. I feel alone and abandoned. And God is never afraid to have those questions. And these three guys are in a situation where it could very easily have felt to them that they were alone. And we see that they were never actually alone, but God was with them all the time through the fire. So we're going to be in Daniel chapter 3, starting at verse 8. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship your golden image. Now we're going to back up just a second, just a little station identification so we're all on the same page. The king had set up this huge statue and ordered everybody to bow down and worship it. And when the writer of this story is telling the story, he loves exaggerating for the sake of humor. Because sometimes exaggeration, when it's overdone, like extreme, so extra, you start to laugh and think, this is just ridiculous. And so the writer here uses lists to show the extremity of this situation and how absurd it is. All the different instruments. The horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music. And this has been going on for the entire chapter. He says it again up in an earlier section in verse 7. The horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon. He's repeating this list over and over to show how ridiculous this whole scene is. So the king has set up this ridiculous situation, and the writer here wants us to understand how stupid this really is. And there are three guys who were told, hey, when you hear all this stuff, you need to bow down and worship. And they wouldn't do it. And so their enemies came to the king and said, hey, king, these guys don't pay attention. Verse 12 says, there are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in a furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you're ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, and see, this is how stupid the king is. He keeps that list going. When you hear all the different kind of music, fall down and worship the image that I have made. And that's all well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? That's pretty gutsy, because the king is setting himself up against deity. He understands his importance. He understands what he can do to people, that he has the power of life and death over people under his kingdom. But he is now putting himself on a higher level than God. He says, who is the God who can save you from me? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up. Now here's the first thing I want you guys to understand, is that they trust in God's power, that God is able to deliver. The king has opposed them. He says, hey, who is the God who can save you from my power? I'm the king. It's good to be king. Who is the God who can save you from me? And they completely trust that God can deliver him. And they answer, if we're thrown into the furnace, our God is able to save us. The first thing that they declare is this: God is on our side. No matter what comes against us, no matter what you throw our way, God is on our side, and our God is able. That's not wishful thinking, that's faith. That is unshakable, unbreakable confidence in the power and presence of God. They didn't have to check their theology. They didn't have to go back and look at Scripture. They knew in their spirits, our God can do this. No matter what you do to us, God can rescue us. It's reminiscent of the Apostle Paul, who writes in Ephesians 3, now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask. Our faith begins knowing that God can do more than we could possibly imagine. In the little things and the big things, our faith, our hope, our confidence is in God. So we trust in God's power because he is able to deliver us. But the second piece here, the most powerful, important piece for me in the entire story, is the very next piece as they address the king. They demonstrate their faith. God can save us. But then they kick it up a notch. And they say, verse 18, but if not, right? Verse 17, God will save us. But then they go on, if not, be it known to you that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up. This is heavy faith. This kicks it up a notch from, hey, God is doing something. I see what God is doing, and I trust in God's power. And we talked about Knight Rider a few weeks ago, hits the turbo boost and says, but even if God doesn't intervene, you can't shake our faith. And you can't shake our commitment to our God. Man, that is heavy faith. And I wish it were the kind of faith that we had every day, but it's not. It's the kind of faith that I wrestle with. It's easy to have faith when you see God doing something. In fact, at that point, it's not even faith. It's just like, yeah, God's doing that. Cool. I'm on Team God. But when you can't see what God is doing, when you can't feel that God is there, and you still believe anyway that I know God can do this, but even if he doesn't do what I want him to do, I'm still sticking on Team God, that is heavy faith. That is a kind of confidence knowing that no matter what happens, I'm walking his path. It's not an even if kind of faith. It's not faith if you fix it for me, God. It's faith regardless of the circumstances. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect, but it means we trust God knowing that God has still got us even in the tough times. were not just trusting God in a rescue, they were trusting in God the Redeemer, regardless of the rescue. And when they demonstrate this kind of faith, it infuriates the king. Verse 19 says, "Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression on his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments." You see, here's a list again. The writer wants to let us know how foolish the entire thing is. Their hats, their cloaks, their tunics, everything, and thrown in. Because the king's order was urgent and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, "Didn't we cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." And he answered and said, "But I see 4 men walking unbound. And in the midst of the fire they are not hurt, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near the door of the burning fiery furnace, and he declared, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. And if you've ever been to a beach bonfire, you know it's impossible to spend time around the fire without smelling like smoke. Impossible. There was no smell even upon them. And Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him, and set aside the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Now he went a little overboard. This king was extra in like everything he did, right? He doesn't get his way, chuck him in the fire. He finds out that they serve the real God, we're going to kill everybody else. Like, this man lives in the extreme. He doesn't know what moderation means. But as he's thrown these 3 men into the fire, we see that God was with them the whole time. And God revealed himself through this angelic presence. The king says, one who looks like a son of the gods. Which is the third thing that we've got to understand from this story, that we trust in God's presence because he is with us in the fire. I like that in this story, it doesn't say that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego could see this 4th one. It doesn't say that they knew. It doesn't say that anybody else in the king's entourage could see. God only revealed that vision to the king. Nebuchadnezzar is the only one who could see the presence in there with them. They had faith that God could save them, but they didn't know what it would look like, that they would still have to go through the fire. God didn't take them out of the fire. He was just with them in the fire, through the fire. And the only one who could see it was the one on the outside looking in. Which to me says when we are going through the fire of our lives, a lot of times we may not see God there with us. And it may feel like we've been chucked into the flames all alone. And it may take someone on the outside saying, you know what, I see a presence with you. You may not know it, you may not see it, but I see God right there with you. What is your fiery furnace in your life? And we all go through different stuff. Cancer in the families, depression, financial ruin, all sorts of stuff that come at us. But there's another in the fire with us. So we trust in God's power because he can deliver. We trust in God's plan even if he doesn't deliver. We always trust in God's presence because he never fails to be there with us. And we may be walking in the flames, but we're walking with Jesus. The fire doesn't define us, but God's fire can refine us.